Hey Ottawa, this is your Monday market snapshot for the Ottawa real estate market for Monday, June 24th, 2024. My name is Annalie Rice, and every week I bring you the details of what's going on in the Ottawa real estate market. Let's see what's happening. Okay, so first off, citywide, we see that the inventory continued to climb. Last week I was wondering whether or not we were starting to peak on the inventory, but it looks like we've still got a little ways to go, and we'll see that in the chart format on the next slide. This week we're up by 55 more listings, and it was mostly in the condos and towns, not so much in the detached market. Sales this week were down by about the same amount there, almost 53 sales lower this week than last. Mostly in the detached market, although a little bit in the condos and towns as well. Okay, so here we have the graph form for the inventory breakdown. We see that the overall inventory, that's the black line, looks to be like it was peaking, but that could, of course, continue to climb up again if the inventory does continue to climb. Our sales were down a little bit this week, and the inventory is up, and that's how you ended up with a sort of flat line for the overall inventory. Now, our inventory this week is 60% higher than it was at the same point last year. That's those dashed lines sort of midway and upper part of the chart. And there is a line there for the sales, and you can see that it's above where we were last year. I do want to point out that last year in June and then in July, that's when the Bank of Canada did raise the interest rates just by a quarter point each time, and that sort of put a stifle on the spring market that had been happening last year. So this June, we've actually had sort of the opposite. They lowered the rates by that quarter point. Not that it makes difference for most people's mortgages, but it sort of changes the sentiment. We were 11 months with the rate sitting at the same high point. And so just even a little drop makes people feel a little bit more comfortable. And our sales this month have all been, every week have been a bit higher than they were last year. Okay, so we had 538 properties listed this week. 157 of those were relisted properties, and 381 were actual new listings to the market. So the ratios still are just shy of 30% relists and 71% this week for the new listings. So it's a lot of new listings, but a lot of relisted properties too. I will comment that the new listings are probably going to drop off fairly significantly this week, just because we're heading into the long weekend, and that'll show up on the July 1st update next week. And then the sales are probably going to be, they potentially could be kind of steady this week, just because people try to get it, conditions off and firm sales before the long weekend. But the week after, definitely going to see a drop in the number of sales because people are taking the long weekend off. So just some things just to see when you see the drops in the next couple of weeks, don't be alarmed that something is drastically changing. It's very seasonal and normal. Okay, so next up we're going to look at the sales breakdown, and I do want to mention that I'm going to try and revamp this to be a little less wordy and maybe just a bit more graphs that I can talk to. There was a suggestion a while ago about graphing the 7 days or 30 days, and I'm going to try to do it, but it's a lot of going back to pull data, so it might take me a little time. In the meantime, we had 270 sales this week. 17% of those sales were with no conditions, which is the same as last week, but you can see definitely slightly lower than we've been a few months ago. And we had 28% of the properties that sold this week sold at or above asking. And that definitely is a little bit lower, and it's been a bit of a downward trend for the last couple months there as inventory is climbing. For the sales within the first 7 days, we had 35 properties sell, and that was 13% of the sales this week. 37% of those sold with no conditions, and that was a big drop from last week. Perhaps it's just a bit of a blip, or perhaps it's a shift, but it was 15% less of the sales happening with no conditions. And then 69% of the properties that sold within those first 7 days sold at or above asking. So while that is still a high percentage, it actually was a bit of a drop from last week. Last week we're up at 80%. So that was a bit of maybe a blip high, but still 69% at or above asking when selling within those first 7 days. Okay, so then we look at the sales within the first 30 days. We had 153 sales, and that's 57% of the sales this week. That was down by 3%, so slightly lowering. And then 18% of those sold with no conditions and 41 at or above asking price. Not much change on either of those. Okay, so when we talk about at or above asking, because there could be a wide variety there, what does that mean? We had 75 homes this week sold at or above asking price. 40 of those, which was 53%, sold at asking or up to 1% over asking price, so just slightly. 23 homes sold between 1 and 5% above asking price. That was 31% of those sales. And 12 homes, which was 16%, sold for more than 5% of asking price. The highest percent over was 24% over the asking, and it was also the highest dollar value, which was $117,500, and it was a detached bungalow in Alta Vista, listed for $499, which is a ridiculously low price for Alta Vista. It was a bit of a fixer-upper, however, a lot of a fixer-upper, but it was something, the type of home that had the potential to have a basement suite put in, and nice big lots, and obviously Alta Vista is a bit of a desirable area. And it sold for $616,500, which is still a pretty good price for Alta Vista, and they were holding offers. Of those 12 properties that had sold for more than 5%, only 2 of them actually had offer dates and times. So I was actually surprised on that this week. Okay, let's zoom in and see what's happening in the different areas of the city. So first off, in the central urban region, we see that the active inventory climbed across property types, and the sales were down for detached and condos and just slightly up for towns. In Canada and Stittsville, we had an increase for townhomes and condos, but a slight drop for detached, but they're still sitting over 200 active detached homes in Stittsville and Canada. And sales were down across property types, except for condos, they were steady. In Barrhaven and Riverside South, we had sort of a mixed bag for inventory. Detached just down 1, condos up 2, pretty high number of condos there for sale, and townhomes down 7. Sales were down across property types for Barrhaven and Riverside South. And in Orleans, we had increase in inventory for towns and condos and steady for detached. Again, lots of detached homes for sale in Orleans. And sales were a mixed bag, so detached down a little bit, townhomes up, and condos down. Okay, so here we have the full data for the residential detached and townhomes and condos. And I did want to point out, you can see that the condo sale price, the average sale price was actually very high. It was $486. There were 3 condos in the central urban region, so obviously that affects the citywide and the central urban region. There were 3 condos that sold for more than $1.3 million, and it obviously brought up the average this week. Okay, so that's the full update for this week. Next week is July 1st, and I'm going to be away on vacation, but I am going to try my hardest to try and get an update out, or at least, the basics. It won't be a full monthly one just because it'll be July 1st, and most of the data won't even be in from the end of June. So the one after that will be the one that has the most detail on the monthly stats for all of June, which I'm really excited to see. I think that it was an exciting month in real estate in Ottawa in June 2024. I hope you have a fantastic week and a great long weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.